several shows we're going to bring you that was taped at Eureka Joe's on Feb 19th. The Master of the Ceremonies was Ron Brower, and his co-conspirators were Tsaurah Litsky, Jim Feast, President Clinton, and Ron Colm. We hope you enjoy this and pay attention, and get your generic impeachment buttons out. You're going to need them for a long time to come, till we abolish the office. So enjoy. Anyone to be deprived, and do it loud, because we might have to do it over again. It's TV. The melody of this song is lost in the mist of antiquity. I think it started out as Men of the West, an Irish folk song. It's also known as Acres of Clams in the U.S. So you'll remember the melody once I begin, if I can remember it first. They tell us a story of lying, oh, it's called Reaganation. For you who don't have the crib sheet. And begin as soon as you can. I need all the help I can get. They tell us a story of lying and of murder too. To whom is this tale mystifying? Not to me, boys, perhaps 'tis to you. They're telling a story of Reagan, a president so bold and so true. How can he be a false killer when he's wrapped in the red, white, and blue? In the red, white, wrapped in the red, white, and blue. A man of the movies, a starlet, but he's just an asshole like you. He's just an asshole like you. Boys, yes, he's just an asshole like you. You elected him in 1980, Dunsmore in 84 too. Oh my, he's a liar, as if you didn't even know. He's killed many people of welfare, Nicaragua, Grenada, much more. He smiles when he gives you the shaft, me lad. He smiles while he gives you the shaft. Ha ha, if you think he cares about poor folks, well then I surmise that you're daft. He always finds money for war girls, he always finds money for death. He'll fight for the rights of the rich boys, he'll fight for them to your last breath. So here's to President Reagan, boys, to Ollie, to Dick, and to Cap. To some, they're all American heroes. To me, they're just murderous crap. Everybody, your last chance. So here's to Dumbo, Ron Reagan, boys, to Ollie, to Fawn, and to Cap. To some, they're American heroes. To us, they're American crap.
Well, I'd like to tell you about a speech that our great emancipator Abe Lincoln that in an unsuccessful campaign, this is from an 1858 campaign speech in Charleston, Illinois, when he ran unsuccessfully for Senate. I will say then that I am not nor ever have been in favor of bringing about in any way the social and political equality of the white and black races. I am not nor ever have been in favor of making voters or jurors of Negroes, nor of qualifying them to hold office, nor of intermarrying with white people. And I will say in addition to this, that there is a physical difference between the white and black races. I believe will ever forbid the two races living together on terms of political and social equality. Inasmuch as they cannot so live, while they do remain together, there must be the position of the superior and the inferior. And I, as much as any other man, am in favor of having the superior position assigned to the white race. I say upon this occasion, I do not perceive that because the white man is to have the superior position, the Negro shall be denied everything. I do not understand that because I do not want to marry a Negro woman, I do not understand that because I do not want a Negro woman for a slave that I must necessarily want to marry her or have her for a wife. Abraham Lincoln, the great emancipator.
There is only one amongst us who has visions so bold he would attempt to define a zeitgeist made of thin air. Please give a big hand to Peter Lamborn Wilson, talking about Bill Bongo Buck Bubba Clinton.
Clinton first came to the attention of the Illuminati when he saved the asses of Grand Master Oliver North and past Master G. Bush, the Freemasonic Messiah, by quashing the investigation into Mena Airport in Arkansas. We can use this cracker, they thought. Another Southern Democrat whose name starts with C. The conspiracy may have to lay low for 4 years, and this yuppie redneck will fill the bill. Sure enough, Bush loses it, big time. Openly proclaims the Novus Ordo Seclorum, bombs Babylon in a vain attempt to destroy Illuminati archives, etc., etc. The CFR Bilderbergers decide Bush must lose. The Prez of Japan, an inner circle member, dons his special Medici ring and sits next to Bush at sushi time. The whole world gawks as Bush pukes in the lap of this unsmiling samurai. Who's losing face? Who's losing lunch? Lloyd Benson, 32nd degree, takes Hick Clinton to Bilderberg conclave in Baden-Baden, 6 months before the election. Ushered into the inner sanctum, Clinton hears the offer from a hooded figure with a German accent and Harvard manners. Look, Bill, all this can be yours. Real estate, blowjobs, Swiss bank account, revenge, your name in history. All you have to do is serve us for 4 years. Betray liberalism for 4 years. Stab in the back all those minorities who will vote you in. Blacks, queers, women, the poor. Always you will say compromise, but holding a dagger in your sleeve. Betray Haiti. Betray homosexuals and alienate the military. Betray Christians and burn their children. Betray peace lovers. Bomb Iraq again. We'll think of some lame excuse. Betray women. Transform them into their own oppressors. As for the poor, I have a great plan, Bill. You will fund poverty programs by taxing food stamps. Hilarious, eh? Environmentalists, talk green, dump chemicals in the wetlands. We will spread rumors about your use of pot, Bill, so all the drug fiends will vote for you. Then we'll intensify the war on drugs. You see? Beautiful concept, Nine. In 4 years, they will beg us to return to power. The liberals themselves will vote for Quayle and Noriega in '96. And then we shall enjoy another 12 years of undiluted power. Perhaps a war in Mexico? Let me think. Here, Bill, here's $1 million for your election campaign fund. That's just for starters, Bill. Now, sit here on this throne while this naked starlet sucks your crank, Bill. Promise them anything. I know, I've got it. Promise them health care. Outlaw all herbs, vitamins, everything like that. We can't allow the unwashed swine to prescribe for themselves, can we now? Tisk, tisk, dear me, no. Promise them health care, then raise their taxes. Give them shit, Bill. Huh? How do you like it? That wife of yours, oh, sorry, Bill. She can pose as an angel of mercy while you, Tin Pot JFK, pure simulation, first virtual president, bumble toward Armageddon like some sinister clown. Power is a great aphrodisiac, eh, Governor? Or should I say, Mr. President?
Last hope of a lost cause. Vivacious vector of velveteen voluptuousness. Still voting McCarthy after all these years. Mike Golden.
McGovern. McGuffin. George. George, of course, by George. Are you ambitious? Sometimes I think I'm more ambitious than anybody else I know. Other times I think the whole thing's a front to keep the open space around me so I don't have to do anything at all. But whatever it is, I've wanted this life. I never wanted to be president. What a thankless job, even for a scumbag. And it doesn't matter whether we're talking Bush, Reagan, Ford, Nixon, or Johnson, probably even Kennedy, too. I don't really know about Jimmy Carter, but Eisenhower seemed like a combination of the Wizard of Oz and Alfred E. Newman. Well, Clinton's origin came right out of that old I'm a pepper, you're a pepper, Dr. Pepper commercial, before redefining his image as the first Barbie, not Ken, to ever become president. When you get right down to it, the only thing you could tell about any of them is they all wanted it so badly they crawled through the shit wagging their tongues for the job. I guess that's more ambitious than I am. If nominated, I will not run. If elected, I will not serve. I'm not proud to say it, but I'm not embarrassed to say that ever since George botched things up, I never wanted to participate in that theoretically flawed hypocrisy called democracy again either. Of course, it's silly to think George could have changed anything, but all these years later, I look back on 1972 and realize those were the days we thought we'd never run out of good love, good vibrations, good trips. And I think what could have been if George had only been hip enough to stand up for the dysfunctional part of all of us and hadn't impaled, imploded, and ultimately impeached himself over the Eagleton affair. I was in Oklahoma, tripping across the Panhandle, when George nominated Eagleton as his running mate. I could go on here about George's decency, but what's the point? By now he's merely a memory, an obscure notation in the game of Trivial Pursuit. What U.S. president did I drop 12 hits of Owsley with on Martha's Vineyard the day the island seceded from the Union and renamed itself the independent nation of New Atlantis? Well, George, of course, by George, because anything was possible in those days. Not at all like these days, where the best we can hope for is hope itself. At least with the bad guys in office, you had to fight against them. But if you look at our icons, the good guys are the bad guys now, too. And soon the good girls will be the bad girls, because the culture ultimately would rather celebrate and reward Tonya than Nancy. Because it's not whether you win or lose that counts, it's how you sell the game, as Nixon's shelf life can testify. while George, poor George, barely remains a ripple on the pond of history.
And now, taking a radical tack on Zachary Dirty Crack Taylor, the premier computer hack of the psychic outback, Dave Mandl. Dave Mandl.
I thought I was supposed to be sixth. This is slightly longish. I'll try to be quick. It's all true. Considering the brevity of his stay in the White House, just under 7 weeks, Zachary Taylor's spectacular legend seems grotesquely exaggerated, like the work of some crazed pre-Civil War spin doctor. But if anything, the reputation of our 12th president has been muted in the century and a half since his death. Surrounded by controversy and swirls of almost unbelievable rumors since before he learned to walk, Taylor was the philanderer that JFK could only dream of being, twice the lush that Benjamin Harrison ever was. On a slow day, he was a bigger crook than Nixon, a worse gambler than James K. Polk, and more of an insufferable, whining brat than George Bush. Few people are aware of this today. The story of exactly how he acquired the peculiar nickname Muskrat Head has unfortunately been lost, but we do know that he was plagued with it almost from birth. His hatred of the sobriquet only increased with the years, and until the day of his tragic premature death, the mere sight of a muskrat, or the mention of the animal's cursed name, was enough to send him into a fearful rage. When, at the young age of 6, he was taunted with the epithet by 2 schoolmates, Taylor stunned his headmaster by chaining the hapless pranksters to a windmill and feeding them clods of grass until they nearly burst. It was only his millionaire father's hastily arranged donation to the school that avoided an early end of Zachary's academic career. 10 years later, on a trip to the zoo with a young lady that he was courting, the unfortunate girl innocently remarked, pointing to a family of muskrats, that they were, quote, queer-looking beasts. This set Zach on a rampage, turning monkeys, tropical birds, an alligator, and an antelope loose, and hurling a peanut vendor's stand into a mud hole. As a young adult, Taylor's frustration and anger with his hated moniker manifested itself in more complex ways. Constantly subjected to verbal abuse and challenged to prove himself to his scornful colleagues, he exhibited increasingly bizarre and flamboyant behavior, hiding from no one in particular inside wagon loads of rotten vegetables, painting his beard blue, and on one occasion even tarring and feathering one of the Taylor family's chickens. While his antics occasionally earned him a certain amount of grudging respect from his friends, they never took him seriously, and this incensed him even more. From being a mere discipline problem in boarding school, Zach later grew to be a full-fledged terror, setting a local paper mill on fire, luring unsuspecting girls into his secret clubhouse in the sub-basement of the Taylor home, and dressing like a giant purple butterfly on religious holidays. Seeing Zachary Taylor sober was something few people could claim to have done. His election to the highest office in the land was naturally a fluke. In an effort to make something of himself and earn the respect of his friends, he half-heartedly declared his candidacy for president in the 1949 election. This was treated as a joke among his acquaintances, who suggested the campaign slogan, "A muskrat in every pot." His opponent, Samuel Gates, was an enormously popular governor who was running unopposed and whose victory was a virtual shoo-in. Zachary's announced candidacy did nothing to change this. A poll taken 2 weeks before the election projected that 98.9% of the popular vote would go to Gates, and so it probably would have if he hadn't been accidentally ground to a pulp in a wheat threshing machine at a campaign stop on the eve of the election. Taylor was now the unopposed candidate, and he won handily. Notoriously prone to laziness and sloth, Taylor had held office for a little over half a day when he gorged himself on 14 pounds of French pastries and a jug of Indian corn whiskey, and fell asleep face down in the White House Rose Garden for 86 hours. Upon awakening, or more accurately, being roused with a thorny branch by a terrified servant, he attempted his first official presidential act, the introduction of a bill requiring all visitors to the White House to do the Mexican hat dance with his 700-pound sister Rebecca, while he, munching on his trademark sack of chocolate donuts, watched. Congress responded to this proposal with precisely 0 yay votes, and so began a stormy and strained relationship that was never to heal. In fact, President Taylor was cruelly razzed whenever he was foolish enough to attempt to address the House of Representatives or the Senate. A favorite prank of many senators was not to show up for the president's addresses at all, but rather to place muskrats decked out in powdered wigs in their own seats in their stead. And this drove the president to such a state that he eventually began sending his wife in his place whenever he was required to give an address. Mrs. Taylor, of course, was treated with no more respect, once even having a dead muskrat's pelt hurled at her, accompanied by shouts of, "At least this one isn't a stupid drunk." Thus ridiculed from the first days of his presidency, Taylor nursed a monumental jealousy of his 11 predecessors, all of whom he was unfavorably compared to. Of these, he seemed to have a special hatred of George Washington, whom he referred to as that bark-toothed Whig sissy. And he spent much of his time trying to best the first president's celebrated accomplishments. Few Americans were amused, however, when he ordered every cherry tree east of the Mississippi to be burned to a stump, or hurled all 70 place settings of the presidential silverware, paid for with a staggering $56,000 of taxpayer money, across the Potomac River. When asked by his disbelieving father whether he was the one responsible for these acts, Taylor replied, "What do you care, buckhead? You'll be dead soon anyway." I love that one. Huh? Sorry. His father's question was probably academic, since had he not disposed of the White House silver in that way, he surely would have lost it gambling. In fact, within 10 days of his taking office, Taylor had surrendered 10 priceless paintings, a bedspread given to John Quincy Adams by the King of Spain, and most of the White House linen to pay off presidential poker debts. His gambler and loan shark friends were also frequent guests to the White House, and they often helped themselves to the valuables that were generally left strewn around the premises by the drunken president. It was often said that, had Taylor served his full 4-year term, there would have been nothing left in the White House but the toilet and a few scraps of the floral wallpaper that he loved so much. As it turns out, after Taylor's brief tenure there wasn't much more than this left, a fact that was hushed up at the very highest levels of government for fear of a violent popular rebellion. One autumn day in 1850, Taylor was taunted for the last time. Upon arising for his daily sponge bath, he was greeted by a horrible spectacle. Overnight, his room had been turned into a massive muskrat lair. The photo of his beloved family on his dressing table now depicted 4 of the slimy river rodents instead. His favorite easy chair had been transformed into a massive hunk of mulch. Whiskers were sprouting from his own nose. Convinced that his drinking and gluttony had finally affected his mind, Taylor decided to put a quick end to his suffering. He ran to the bedroom window and flung his body out onto the paving stones below. Not for a minute did he suspect that he had been the victim of an elaborate hoax perpetrated by trusted members of his cabinet. The greatest indignity was still to come, however. Due to a mix-up at the cemetery, his grave was mistakenly crowned.
Yes, they said Melanie Griffin did that for a movie.
That's correct.
Well, someone told her to do it. I don't know if it was her choice, but...
Hello.
Hi.
Tuli Kupferberg.
Well, I can't believe that I just sang this song, but it was 4 years ago on the show. We do it every 4 years.
Really?
Yeah, it's our presidential anthem, and Nobody for President it's called, and I think Wavy Gravy invented that phrase and actually started. Nobody's been on the ballot in several places.
Exactly.
And the melody I stole from Of Thee I Sing, they sort of a very silly musical comedy of 1931 written by George Kaufman that has a good song by George and Ira Gershwin, Of Thee I Sing. But anyway, this is Nobody for President. You'll all remember it, I think. Maybe we can show the words. They're sort of, you might not, they're hard to understand, right? You can join in on the chorus if you would, if you want to. So we'll get
Even
right
me?
to it. Yeah.
Oh, God. All right.
Nobody for president, da-da-da-da-da-da. Nobody for president, da-da-da-da-da-da. Nobody will speak the truth, Nobody goes to the root. Nobody can make you feel. Nobody will make you real. Nobody for president. Da-da-da-da-da-da. Nobody for president. Da-da-da-da-da-da. Nobody will house the houseless. Nobody will rouse the rouseless. Nobody turns sword to plowshare. See to it that all get our share. Nobody will not tax you. Get the bosses not to ax you. Nobody will tote your load. Nobody deserves your vote. Now this we only do 2 lines. Nobody for president. Ta-da-da-da-da-da. Nobody will clean the water. Nobody will fresh the air. Nobody will spend a quarter to assess the land, to assure the land stays fair. Nobody so wise of heart. Nobody doth never fought. Nobody was blessed with grace to keep us peasants in our place. Nobody plans no disruption on the highway to corruption, and nobody should have the power to destroy us all in about half an hour. Now another half course. Nobody for president. Da-da-da-da-da. Now this is very important. Listen. Every 4 years in this nation, butcher, lawyer, cop, or baker, fools, no matter what their station, get to pick their own dictator.
All right.
And we all are free to choose him. From whatever wing we're free, right or left of the same party. Sleaze party of property. Them damn Republicrats.
Yeah.
Nobody for president. Da-da-da-da. Nobody for president. Da-da-da-da. No one holds the rod of God over you, you poor dumb sod. Chug your beer and sip your toddy. Stumble out of vote for nobody.
Yeah!
Vote early and vote often.
Yay!
Nobody will tell you straight. When you vote, you abdicate. Find the ways to take your power at home, school, factory, our power. Tweedledum and Tweedledee, nobody'll set you free. Tweedledee and Tweedledum, in your own acts, your liberty. Okay, everybody, now this is your last chance. Nobody for president. Da-da-da-da-da-da. Nobody for president. Da-da-da-da-da. Everybody's going